Hello, and welcome to the Other Minds podcast. I'm Joseph Bohikian. Other Minds, founded in 1993 in San Francisco by Charles Armacanian and Jim Newman, is devoted to championing the most original voices in new and experimental music. On Season 3 of the podcast, we're talking with a range of composers, performers, and authors across the field of new music, including the featured composers from the 28th Other Minds Festival, which will take place September 25th to 28th, 2024 at the Brava Theater in San Francisco. You're listening to the music of today's guest, Martin Smørdal. Martin is a Norwegian composer and performer of contemporary music. With a background in experimental bands and improvisation, he writes music often inspired by social phenomena, imitation and mimicry, swarms, flocks, and other collective behaviors, memory, and the unevenness inherent to being human. His music has been performed at festivals such as Ultima, ISCM, Mata, and Borealis, and released on the labels LAWO, Sofa, and Aurora. Smørdal is also a co-founder and member of Ensemble Neon, an Oslo-based contemporary music collective. His piece, Both Sides Now, will be performed by Yarnwire on Night 3 of this year's Other Minds Festival. Welcome to the podcast, Jan Martin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
So how has your interest in social structures and collective behaviors influenced your approach to composition?
Where to begin? That's huge. It's my starting point for almost everything I do, I think. I look at myself as quite a sensitive person. Always like having my antennas out. That's from the personal point of view. But I'm always curious as how we, as human beings, always use our ability to assimilate, to imitate, and to reflect, like a mirror reflect other people. And the sum of all this reflection or imitation or all these reactions we have all the time, the sum of it always expands and add layers on layers of reactions and feelings and all these expressions we make from each other. It forms something new. It forms something new, like patterns and sayings that wasn't there initially. So to be a bit more precise, if someone do one thing and do it once more and do it once more, it's never the same. And with several people do it, suddenly it looks like something new. Get these patterns, these forms, and something new emerges. So the field of emergence has been also a huge influence because of that. Also, in the recent years, I expanded this interest into memories also. I try to find different ways to implement memories, other memories, my own memories, and actually also how the memory in itself works. As we reconstruct memories all the time, never the same, but it's like a filter through our day or our past experience and so forth.
Could you talk some more about that phenomenon by which, when we remember, we're recreating and creating variations in our repetitions of those memories?
When we recall a memory, it's like we bring it forth. It's like a new playback each time. We have an impression of a memory, but when we recall it or retell it to other or to ourselves, it's always like colored by our past experience or a good or bad day we're having or the situation or the other person. It gets changed a bit each time, which is a known phenomenon in the psychology branch. But I am very curious about this because it makes like an infinity of possibilities, an infinity of truths in every motives or sentence or anything. It really expands the reality. For me, that's very interesting.
And so how do you translate that into music in your own compositions?
I tried each time, even though I have the same starting point in many sense for each piece. My pieces, for those who know me, know that each piece is quite different in how it sounds or how it is performed in as for instruments or how the sound is. It's different, but I find different aspects. It's like I have the same idea each time, but it's like a sphere, and it turns, or I turn in front of it. So I get something new each time. So sometimes it's totally concrete. As for memories, for instance, I talked about memories. I interviewed a lot of musicians or performers of my pieces and use in different sense either how they say it. It makes a rhythm. It makes some kind of phrase. That's just a simple way of doing it. It could be concrete in like a quote for something they talk about in music. But it can also be in a whole different sense that with the social structure thing, it might be also I can give a performer an idea or a starting point from which they don't know where it's going to head, or I don't know it, and I'll ask them to create this short phrase maybe, and I can ask them to repeat that phrase once more, and once more, and once more, and once more, and it can suddenly it's either I lay it overlay it, dub it, or I can put it after each other, and it's suddenly something new appear. Either I get a material I can work with, or I can get something in itself. Like I had several pieces being created like that. So I don't know where it's heading. I have no sense of form, but I have a sense of starting point, and I have a sense of I have an idea of how to work with whatever comes out, and there will emerge something out of it.
Well, let's talk about some of those specific pieces. You have a series of pieces called My Favorite Thing. Could you talk about how some of these ideas work in those pieces?
Yeah, when I started that project, which is a while ago, that was my starting point for working with memories. It's a trilogy, but as for now, I can announce that it's not a trilogy anymore because I'm working on 2 other pieces, which is going to be called number 4 and 5. But yeah, when I was starting with them, I was very curious on other people's memories and what was their initial spark. Like for this sounds very tabloid and stupid, but I really mean it. I really tried to catch something with it. So I interviewed all the musicians. This piece is 1, 2, 3. It's for a percussion trio, 9 performers ensemble, and an orchestra. So it's a lot of people to interview. Anyway, I tried to find these early sparks, like something when we were probably young or early adolescence or something, when they probably experience something that has a profound impact. This is why I'm going to do music, or this is why I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing. So I've tried to collect all these things. And I had an idea that the fewer performers in the group, the more diverse it will be, and the more they are, the more overlapping it will be. And I used it very different in each of the 3, not longer trilogy. So in the first one, it's for this percussion trio called Pinquins. And I just got stuck with actually just one sentence from one of the performer, which was when she was probably, I don't know, early adult. She heard this rock concert, and there was an incredible, for her, it was an incredible drum break, like a drum fill or something, drum break, which was really, really simple. But probably there was something in the timing and the atmosphere that really just sucked into her, and this was something huge for her. So I based the whole piece on that simple, which was like crack gong, and that's it. That's the whole thing. So I just used that simple pendulum, like this really simple drum fill, and it turned out quite nice. So I take it apart. I decreate the memory. It starts totally concrete, like just putting it out, and I have pauses in between, and I'm taking it apart in some sense. It's goes into some kind of fog, and at the end, the only thing you can hear is feedback from the walkie-talkies they are playing with, and some clicking noise and white noise, which sums up to something actually beautiful. For me, it's almost like a chorale or something like that. That was the first of them, and I worked with different ways of interpreting the memories. In the second one, I made like a collage of memories from each of the 9 performers, creating 9 parts, sometimes overlapping, but almost positioned beside each other. And also with all the voices of the whole orchestra's memories, it goes in and out of the totally concrete, because somehow the classical trained performers, they have like this massively overlapping experiences and preferences of music. Strangely enough, it was a lot of opera. Not only opera, it was opera overtures, actually, which was one of the huge things for many, many of them. So that orchestra piece travels in and out of this memory fog and ends with a really outstretched Rossini overture, which is stretched really abstract out, but I think it's recognizable.
Let's listen to an excerpt of My Favorite Thing 3 by Jan Martin Smørdal, performed by the Norwegian Radio Orchestra. Your work is also influenced by interpretations of naturally occurring phenomena. So I'm thinking of, you've talked about flocking, or your piece Kraft Balance, which is a musical translation of the hum from an electrical current.
Kraftbalance, or power balance in English. It's a collaborative piece with me and an artist called Øystein Bühler Odden, Norwegian artist. I have to talk a bit about him. He creates these extensive sound installations and also exhibitions. Try to say something about the spaces he travels to. He travels a lot to churches and do recordings of organs, and also the hum from the electric grid in each of the churches and places he worked with. And he invited me into his project some time ago, and in the dialogue with him I created this score for his idea of translating the electric grid, the hum, which here in Europe, most of Europe, is 50 hertz. I believe it's 60 hertz.
Here in the US.
Yeah, which makes it even more interesting to somehow someday do it also. Or probably on the border to Canada, where it's 50 hertz again. So we can have like an orchestra on each side. That would be super interesting.
Yeah.
So the piece is not only this translation, but it's also like making detectable or experienceable the pull and push of the demand and supply of all the electricity. It creates like this mass swarm in some sense of how the whole grid pendulates between this the demand and supply of the power, because it fluctuates. The guided pitch is the 50 hertz, but it's almost never 50 hertz. It's going up and down in small decimals. So that's the differences you can hear on the recording of this. It's been performed several times, but this recording was really long stretch. I think the recording was 75 minutes, but some of it are on the record. And then you can clearly hear the enormous facets, or the how the people swarms compared to the guide pitch of 50 hertz. There's something obvious about the project, but it's also something almost tactile and something recognizable in it.
Let's listen to an excerpt of Craft Balance by Jan Martin Smørdal and Øystein Weiler Odden, released by Sofa Music. On night 3 of this year's Other Minds Festival, the percussion and piano quartet Yarnwire will perform your piece, Both Sides Now. So could you tell us about that piece?
Both Sides Now is it's more a traditional piece for me in the sense that I don't use feedback and I don't experiment with the instruments as much as other pieces, so hence the traditional part. But I tried to create a now which is prolonged, but also does this play with attention in the piece. So it starts really simple, and the form of the whole piece is not very complicated. It's like a mirrored form, beginning and ending at the same manner. But it's a really slow-moving, wavy piece. I called it Both Sides, as I talked about earlier. It's because of the multitude of attentions we as individuals have together, experience the same thing but experience it differently, hence the different memories. And I also made it hard to know how long the piece has been going on and where does it end, hence the now in the title. I just told you it's a traditional piece, but for me has been a really experimental piece. It's kind to the ear, probably, but it's experimental in the how I use this simple form. And it's been super interesting composing that piece.
What's the role of spatialization in the piece? Because you've specifically asked for the two sections of piano and percussion to be separated from each other.
Most of the piece is based on Hockeytus pattern. Is that the word in English also?
Pocket, yeah.
Okay, so it's mostly Hocket, at least in the beginning and the end. And so It has been performed in small churches and have this enormously spacious effect from that pocket. I think it like underlines the point of the lack of the the absolute now. It's like just emphasize that point in many sense. I think that's actually my main point with it. But I also like to fill the room. It surrounds all the audience. Almost all my pieces, I would prefer them to surround the audience, even though that's impossible in most cases. But I try to stretch for it, at least. Also in this piece. And obviously, I haven't talked about, it's obvious I've stolen the title from a really famous tune, of course. But it has nothing to do with Joni Mitchell in itself, even though I really love her songs and text. But it was perfect for me, this title, so I just had to borrow it.
Let's listen to an excerpt of Jan Martin Smørdal's Both Sides Now, performed by Trond Skau, Helga Kjekhus, Andre Fjørtoft, and Åsmund Moen. You can hear Jan Martin Smørdal's Both Sides Now, performed by Yarnwire at Other Minds Festival 28 on September 27th, 2024 at the Brava Theater in San Francisco. Thank you, Jan Martin, for talking with me today, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you for having me here.
This has been an episode of the Other Minds podcast, brought to you by Other Minds. Our 28th festival is September 25th to 28th, 2024 at the Brava Theater in San Francisco.